Bret.
Big.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. Good. All right. All right. We'll start from the beginning, and that's. I guess you were from Long Island, New York.
Originally, I was born in Queens, Flushing, Queens.
Okay.
But yeah, I lived on Long Island most of my life. Till I went on the road.
So how did you end up hooking up? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I played in a Long Island band called Cheetah, and we used to open up for Twisted and all those bands, Swift Kick, everybody on Long Island. And one night we opened up for this band called Madam X. Came to town. They were from Detroit, and the band blew me away. The band blew me away.
Right.
The bass player, and the two girls. The drummer and the guitar player. The singer was kind of weak. I didn't really like the singer. But then again, I was the singer in my band, and I had an ego bigger than any band. So, nobody was, as far as I was concerned. So, but I really dug the band. The whole, the girls and everything. They were phenomenal. So, I got to know them after the set and stuff, and we talked. And I said, hey, if you ever need a new singer, give me a call. So that's how it happened. About 2 months later or something like that, they said, hey, were you serious? They called me and said, were you serious? I said, yeah, it seems like cool. And they had some things going for them at the time, so I decided to make the move. It was a hard move for me because I had to leave my brother was in my band. He was my guitar player and stuff, but I thought it was a way to get my foot in the door, and later come back and bring him with me, kind of thing.
Right.
So who knew what the future? I lived for playing rock and roll.
Right.
Nobody thinks the band. Nobody thinks. You all have dreams of being rock stars and stuff like that. So.
Right. Now, was their image real over the top when you first saw them as well, or was that something you guys?
No, they were kind of, but it wasn't polished yet.
Okay.
Had the girls, they looked good, they dressed kind of good, not over the top yet though. They looked hot, and they played great. That was the thing that really got me, was the playing was phenomenal.
Right.
It's not just that they were up there. The guitar player shred, she was unbelievable, and the drummer, oh my God, we were like, holy crap, look at this, and it was and the bass player, it was always an ominous presence with him, he wasn't Godzilla yet,
Right.
He was just Chris, and he was a steady, hard rocking bass player, looked good, and played well and sang, backups and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, wow, what a band, man, and their singer was weak, like I said,
Right.
So, later on when after I joined the band, I moved to Connecticut. We had a band house in Connecticut that we were in. They told me, yeah, we got this house in Connecticut and stuff, and let's come up and rehearse, and then we plan on going on the road. We want to get a record deal. I said, yeah, why not? What the heck? So I joined, and I went up to Connecticut, and they had this house in Darien, Connecticut, with no furniture but road cases. That was the furniture, were road case stuff. And so we rehearsed our butts off, and then finally we went on the road. 1982, we went on the road.
Wow.
We went from New York to Arizona, back and forth for three years. We had 5 days off each year for Christmas. That's it.
Wow.
But we played every day. We played 6 nights a week, and we travel hundreds of miles in between each show. We do like a weekend here and a week here, and 4 sets a night, sometimes 5 on the weekends.
Holy cow.
We really, I want to meet Mr. Dews because I need some change, dude. I only paid Mr. Dews. He owes me now. So we rock and rolled, and we honed our craft, and we did that. We looked, we always went with the idea, look big, sound big, be big, And so we had a semi full of equipment, PA, lights, we had the biggest show, and we put on a great show. It was magic when I joined and we played together. Madam X show, like I think Chris came up with, or somebody came up with, it was an orgasm and an eargasm to watch. Orgasm to watch, eargasm to listen. It was just over the top. It became over the top, and as Godzilla got his name because, he was in a bad mood one day, I remember, and he was breaking stuff and like knocking stuff out. I go, man, you acting like Godzilla, damn it, knock it off, And then I started calling him Godzilla. That's how we got his name.
Funny.
And the girls would tease, and then the image just came naturally. That we teased up the hair and stuff, and on everybody, and I took a can of Aquanet to do Chris's hair up like that, the Godzilla's hair to be like 10 feet tall. So we did that, and we straight. We were booked by like American bands, out of Texas, and we just did the circuit. I mean, we did it. We played from everywhere, from New York to Arizona. I mean, I'm talking places that the semi was bigger than the club.
Wow.
Actually, one time we pulled up to this club with the semi and stuff, and the guy came out and goes, this ain't going to work. So he just paid us and gave us the deli, and we went on our way. But
wow.
We played everywhere, the Cardi's chain, everything, and just played and played and played. Till one day we were in Arizona, said, okay, meanwhile, don't forget we're working on our original show and stuff, because we did a couple of covers tune, but we had original music and stuff, and we were rocking. And we would do covers like Accept and Ozzy and all that kind of stuff. And so one day we said, you know what, it's time to do our original show, and let's go showcase the band. We're like, yeah, we're ready, let's go. So sure enough, we went to L.A. and we played, and we did an unknown gig first, like at Madame Wong's East, I think it was, or West, Madame Wong's West, I think. And this one lady was there, and she said, come with me to the Rainbow, dressed. We just got on stage, with our gear on and stuff, and come to the Rainbow. Don't worry about it. So sure enough, we went to the Rainbow, and we caught the eye of A&R guy from Jet Records and stuff, and we were playing at the Troubadour, so we invited him down, and he brought Don Arden down to the Troubadour. Now, Don Arden is Sharon's dad. He came in, he seen the show, and he came up to us after, and he said, I got to have you. You're my greatest find ever, and signed us the next day to a record deal. We were in CBS, Jet Records, CBS.
Right.
And we thought, wow, we did it, we did it. We made it, We were such babies in the business,
Right.
We had no idea was in store for us. So we went over to England. We played overseas in the UK, and it just started happening. We did 2 videos. We were on MTV. The record came out, and that was that. And then all of a sudden, the record company folded or something. Don got in trouble, hanging somebody out a window or something. I don't know what it was. But he was notorious for being like the Godfather, you know what I mean?
Wow.
So next thing we know, Don got in trouble, and we were in England actually, and we played the Marquee, and it sold out in like 20 minutes, a half an hour, and they had to turn away like 500 kids. The streets were closed off because they had to turn away so many kids.
Wow.
Ozzy was there. He took us to dinner afterwards with the guys from Whitesnake. We had a blast in England. Then we were scheduled to do the Dominion Theater stuff, and the promoters or whatever were worried because the pre-sales weren't happening.
Okay.
And this is the true story. The story that the record company came up with was that my sister passed away, and we had to leave England, and I had a bereavement in the family, which I didn't because I don't have a sister. I have 4 brothers, 3 brothers and stuff. So we left England, and we came home, and Jet sent us to Canada, and we did a little 3 or 4 date thing up in Canada. And at this time, we were like, what's going on? Nothing's, we were so left in the dark about things.
Right.
That I said, you know what? I said, I'm going back to New York. I said, I need a break, or I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to go back to New York. And I went back to New York and started my band back up with my brother. and Roxy at the same time got an offer from Vixen.
Right.
And she went to Vixen. And Chris and Max had a couple of band members, one who you probably know.
Right.
Actually,
Sebastian
was a friend of mine we met in Canada from a band called Kid Wicked. His name is Sebastian. And when I left Madam X, I came back to New York, and I got this demo tape in the mail and a call from somebody named Dave Sabo or whatever his name was, and he said, "Hey, we want you to join our band. It's called Skid Row." And I was like, you know what, I just got off the road and stuff with Madam X, and I'm just going to hang out in New York for a while. Thank you. But I said, I go, this kid who was replacing me in Madam X looks good, and I guess they met him later on, met Sebastian, and the rest is history with that. But Sebastian sang with Max and Chris for a little while. I don't know how long, just a little while. And then he went and got in Skid Row. I think he met him at Mark Weiss's wedding or somebody's wedding. I don't remember. I wasn't around during that, doing my own thing. But I did my band Kaiser, and we played tri-state area and stuff. And then I said, you know what, guys, let's move out to Arizona. So I moved my whole band out here to Arizona because while I was in Madam X, I met a lot of connections out here in Arizona and stuff, and it was cheap. It's cheap to live here.
Sure.
It's really cheap to live here, and it's 6 hours away from L.A. So I was thinking to myself, I could showcase my new band in L.A. and I could live in Phoenix because there was a music scene. We were playing 5 nights a week with my band Kaiser here.
Wow.
So we were doing what we love to do, and we went about our business, and we were playing, and we got a nomination for in the New York Music Awards, best new metal band or whatever, and then after that we got a Bud Light sponsorship. So we thought it was happening, I'm on my way, we're doing it again. And then I found out I was going to be a dad,
Wow.
So I decided at that point that I don't want to be on the road dad. I don't want to see my kid growing up through pictures, so I decided to stop playing music for a while and raise my son.
Wow.
So I stopped altogether, and I started working for the sheriff's office out here, and I've been with the sheriff's office for 20 years now.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and that brings us to kind of recently, not too long ago actually, about, I don't know, it was last year, which isn't that far away. I think it was around February, March, something like that, or before that, I get a call. I guess while Roxy was playing with Vixen in England at the Fire Fest, she noticed a lot of memorabilia coming across the table, Madam X stuff. So she talked to her sister, Maxine, and said, hey, you know what, we ought to do something for the fans because we have a lot of fans. Now, in the meantime, I've noticed on Facebook I've been getting a lot of hits, when are you ever going to do a Madam X reunion, and I noticed a lot of YouTube videos coming out, and all of a sudden I noticed that my CD is for sale, which was funny because when my record came out in '84, there were no CDs.
Right.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden there's a CD for sale. I'm not receiving no royalty checks. I don't know what's going on. So the band decided, Maxine called me, Maxine and Roxy, and they said, do you want to do something, and we'll put it out for the fans, just, to see what happens. So I was like, Sure, yeah, why not? We hadn't seen each other in 28 years, or whatever it was. And I said, let's get Chris back, and we'll put something together and put it out there, see what happens. So we put that on Facebook. We had a Facebook page we developed, and we came up with another 80s rock song. And we put it out there, and we get a call from the people from Sweden Rock Festival. I guess they called Maxine and said, hey, is this the original band together, all original members? And she was like, yeah, we want you. We want you to play Sweden Rock. I get a phone call, hey, you want to go play in Sweden? I'm like, what? We haven't played together in 30 years. What do you mean? yeah, they want us in Sweden Rock Festival. I was like, okay, why not? Well, everybody wanted to do it, so I flew to Detroit. We rehearsed a little. We did a little warm-up unknown gig at Diesel, not advertised or anything, just a few friends that we knew out there.
Okay.
We said, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And we went over to Sweden. And, dude, I got to tell you, there were kids in the airport when we got there asking for autographs and everything. I was like, what the hell just happened? Am I in the Twilight Zone or something? I'm looking around for cameras in the airport. I'm like, all right, this is a fucking setup, right? Where's the cameras? Because we're like, no, we from Poland. Madam X is huge in Poland and stuff, and we come to Sweden Rock to see you. And I was like,
wow.
Holy crap. Man, I got to tell you, from that moment on, the whole next 4 or 5 days we were in Sweden was the best time I ever had in my life, besides my son being born and my marriage, whatever.
That's awesome.
Anyway, I have to say those. But seriously, I mean, Black Sabbath with Ozzy. You can't, I got to see Black Sabbath with Ozzy. I was like, holy crap. Alice Cooper,
wow.
who I know, and my good friend Tommy's the guitar player. Nugent, who I know, Mick Brown and Greg Smith, are good friends of mine. Everybody was playing. We got along with it. I mean, it was amazing. But what blew me away was the people in Sweden Rock were like, you guys don't really know how big you are here, do you? And we're like, what? He goes, yeah, you must have sold over 1 million records. I'm like,
wow.
Say what? I said, what? I got no money. What are you talking about? Yeah. And anyway, we were scheduled to do the last day of the festival, which was a Saturday, and at 12:45 in the afternoon. You take what you get, right? So
right.
The Sweden Rock people even said to us, hey, we don't want you to be disappointed. It's the last day of the festival, 12:45 in the afternoon. People have been partying for 4 days straight. You might get maybe 1,000 people or so. We were like, you know what? We're so happy to be here and grateful. And we really were. I mean, the band has changed so much, grew up so much, matured, and we didn't know how it was going to be back together again, but it was like we just went away for a week and came back and started up again. It was magic when we stepped on that stage. But here's the funny part. So we said, yeah, that's cool, man. We don't care. Thank you for having us. So we're in the back trailer area in the dressing room, and we're doing interviews and photo shoots and stuff, and I'm hearing, I'm like, you guys hear that? They're like, yeah, it's getting close to going on. So we get in the golf carts that go towards the stage, and it's getting louder. And I'm like, whoa. So you can finally see through the stage, and there's a sea of people, right? And I'm like, and the guy from Sweden Rock goes, yeah, I know. He goes, there's more than 1,000. He goes, actually, there's probably around 13 to 15,000 people out there. We were like, wow.
Whoa.
As soon as I hit that stage, the energy that came from the people in Sweden, and we met people that came from Australia, from Japan, everything. They came to see us. Dude, I was a walking erection. I got to tell you. That stage, and it was like, zwing! It was just excitement. I was so high for the next week, 2 weeks from that, and I'm just talking about a natural buzz, electrified high from the people that and they were singing every single word to the songs we wrote back in 1984, and including the new single which we just released June before we played. Wow. It was unbelievable. I knew they knew the words because I sang the wrong words on the first line of High in High School, and the guy looked at me and shook his head no. Like, no. I was like, oh. To myself, I'm going, listen, motherfucker, I wrote the song. If I want to sing different words, this is the 2014 version.
Oh, that's great. That is great. So, I mean, like, you just basically went through 30 years and in a quick whirlwind. And, I mean, doing the Sweden Rock thing, I guess that must have been like the ultimate comeback for you guys.
Well, you know what? The whole Sweden Rock thing was either going to be it was actually going to be like a thank you, farewell, thing because we never got a chance to do Sweden or Europe. You know, we did the England and the UK, but we didn't get a chance to really branch out like I think we should have. Back in '84,
Right.
I got to be honest with you, I think we were ahead of the game. You know, when our
Absolutely.
videos came out on MTV, the next thing you know, Tipper Gore decides to throw her hat in, and the Senate Wives, and fucked MTV up. You know,
Right.
And whose videos were the first to go? Well, the ones with the two boys and the two girls in it, and the guitars between the legs, and they went, "Oh my God, you know, we got to cut this one." So ours was like one of, you know, in the top group that got cut first. So, you know, that and the fact that we're kept in the dark and everything, you know, it's like the record was called "We Reserve the Right." Well, now we deserve the right. You know what I'm saying? I want back what was taken from me in 1980, 85, whatever it was, through those years. You know, I want to go to Japan. I want to go to Europe. I want to play. I want to tour. I want the people to be reintroduced to Madam X because even now it's magic, and it's magic today. You know, we're not stuck in the 80s. We were an 80s, big 80s hair band, but you know what? We got better chops. We all got better at our craft, and it's even hotter now. I mean, I just can't wait to get it out there. You know, this new record we're working on is going to be out of this world.
Yeah, I mean, the new song is incredible. I mean, it's such a catchy song.
Isn't it? And what
great.
a way to be introduced, right? There's nothing wrong with another 80s rock song.
Right. You know, it's funny. And when I was interviewing Chris last night, I was telling him, I said, you know, I sent a couple buddies of mine who, longtime friends up through the 80s and still tight today. You know, we're always emailing back and forth, whether it's music or, you know, porn. And I told them I was going to be interviewing you guys, and I sent over the new song, and my one buddy is like, thanks a lot, because now I can't stop singing that friggin' song in my head all day.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Wait till you hear the rest of the stuff, though. It's going to blow people's minds. It really is.
Yeah.
I flew to Detroit. I was there a couple of months ago to do the vocal tracks. I got to go back and do some more and then mix and stuff like that. But it sounds, just the raw tracks were like, oh my God.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. Well, you know, everybody's been still playing. Maxine has her own thing, you know, that she's been doing. Roxy's playing a Vixen. I've been doing my thing. I went to a different way. After my son got older, you know, I stopped playing music for a while.
Right.
When my son was older, I've always been a big Elvis fan. You know, I've always admired Elvis, and I thought, you know, he's the king of rock and roll. So,
sure.
And it's always come natural to me to be able to sing Elvis stuff. You know, even in Madam X, we did a Jailhouse Rock or something. You know, we clowned around. And in my band Kaiser, we did a couple of Elvis tunes. So I said, you know, I just, my mom and moved my mom and dad out here from New York, and they were putting on this party. My mom and my aunt were putting on this party at Luau. So she said, do you want to sing some songs at our party? I said, yeah, you know what, I'll put on an Elvis show. She goes, what do you mean? I'll rent the costume, I'll wear a wig, and I'll glue the sideburns on, and I'll do this show for you, just as a fun, you know?
Right.
So I do the show, and it went over so good that I got like 6 gigs from that. And then from those gigs, I started getting gigs. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, I'm playing every weekend, doing an Elvis show. You know, I'm singing live to tracks, you know, but I'm putting on the show with the jumpsuit and everything like that. And it just started snowballing. Well, then I met my wife, you know, who I've been married. I'll be married 10 years in July. And she said, well, why don't you just style your hair, you know, straighten it? Because I have curly hair. You know, in Madam X, I had curly hair, long curly hair. Well, you know, when I worked for the sheriff's office, I cut all my hair off, and I had like a flat top. So I grew it out a little longer, and I colored it, and I straightened it, and I styled it like Elvis. Well, the sheriff himself, Sheriff Joe, loved it and I do things for the office. I do fundraisers for the MASH unit because my sheriff is a big animal advocate. He rescues a lot of animals. We rescue a lot of animals in Arizona. And so we put on these shows to raise money to pay for the vet bills and the food and everything so the taxpayers don't have to. And he lets me keep my hair and sideburns. But I'm in office and keep my hair and my sideburns, and I do these shows to raise money. So, that was cool, but I missed playing with a band.
Sure.
So I said, I always loved the early Elvis, early rock and roll, 1956 genre stuff. So I said, I'm going to put together a band called 56. So I put together this band 56, and it's just an upright bass, guitar, drums, and me singing. And we do like early Elvis, Eddie Cochran, Johnny Burnett, Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee, all that stuff we were doing to begin with. Well, then we decided we were going to write some music. We started writing music, and it was kick-ass rock and roll music, straight-ahead rock and roll music. There was a market for it because, there was no more Stray Cats. There was no more, So we decided it wasn't going to be totally rock, it would be early rock and roll. So we put out our first CD not too long ago called Steppin'. It's on iTunes and everything like that, and it rocks. And then I get a call from Madam X about, well, you want to do this thing, and so this whole thing has been intertwining, and I'm like totally busy. I do shows as Elvis, at restaurants and parties. I do 56 stuff at resorts and hotels and stuff like that, and now I got Madam X back to the concerts and record albums. So, and I'm still working because I can retire in February, but I don't think I'm gonna. Well, I was told I can't, so that. Busy life. You know what? I thank God every day, every night before I go to sleep, say my prayers. I thank the Lord up above for giving me this life. I'm truly blessed. I got a great family, and I got great friends, and now I got the band back, and, it's just onward and upward. You know what I mean?
Now,
that's what I wanted.
I think I saw in your bio that there was like a 10-year span, like after your son was born, to where you did that first performance as Elvis.
Yeah.
When you did that
I didn't
first
do anything
performance, when you did that first performance, were you kind of like, why did I wait so long to do something like this?
The one thing I can honestly tell you and anybody else, and this is, I have no regrets whatsoever. Like when I turned, Skid Row down, or I had a chance to try for Priest when Halford left, I don't have any regrets, because I look at it this way. Things turn out the way they're supposed to turn out. Sebastian was supposed to get the gig in Skid Row. It was meant to be.
Right.
He's a rock god. That was meant to happen, not me. I was meant to raise my son, work hard, the sheriff's office, and then one day get back together with Madam X and put out a killer record with a killer tour and get back what we lost. You know what I mean? I don't
absolutely.
want back. And I think the best thing I ever heard, I think it was David Lee Roth who said it, that the rearview mirror in your car is not used to see, it's used to see where where you've been. It's to see how good you look where you're going.
Right.
Don't look over my shoulder, and I don't. The past is the past is the past. Met a lot of cool people, got a lot of great friends. We have a lot of good people that love the band. I just want to move forward now and get going. This is the hard part, because you know as well as I do now, the record industry is non-existent, really.
Sure.
But he does studio things on their computers now, and you can sound godly, but the proof is in the pudding when you go to play live. You know what I mean? You've got to have it. And Madam X has it. It's magic on stage. Magic. And it's like we never lost a beat, never lost a step. It's a little rusty and hurts more after the end of the set, but
now,
had a birthday coming in February, and I'm, my main slogan. I can't tell you how old I am, but I am old.
Come on now.
No, my main slogan for my birthday party is "I'm alive at 55."
Nice.
It's going to be awesome. I'm doing a reunion with my Kaiser band for my birthday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's just it's been a rock and roll life, and the 10 years that I took off, to me, are great. My son I raised my son. I was a single dad for a long time, just raising my kid and working my ass off, and I have no regrets. And then when I did that first Elvis gig, I said, wow. When I saw the people's reaction to it, and I knew, I had to tell myself, well, people love Elvis. I don't care who you are, you love Elvis. I mean, everybody loves. When I do shows now, dude, I'm telling you, some of these women, they lose it. I mean, they're shaking when I go to get a scarf and a kiss. They're shaking. They're having orgasms right there and then, and
funny.
people money in my jumpsuits, like I've been taking my clothes off. It's amazing that people love Elvis, and if you do it well and genuine. Now, I don't mean going up there and trying to be Elvis, because I'm not an impersonator. You know what I mean? I do a little tribute to him. I don't try to be Elvis. No, I go up there and I sing the songs the best I can, and it just naturally sounds like Elvis because I let my inner Elvis come out. I just don't like when people go up there and go, "Hey, baby, how you doing, baby?" Come on. I'm not Elvis and stuff like that. I could start to do that. I got the accent, Red, Sonny, give me a Percocet sandwich and stuff like that. But, I don't do that. I just go up there and I use my humor. I sing the songs the best I can, genuine, and they're great songs. And I don't know, I love singing the ballads that Elvis had, the gospel music that he had. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
But there's that side that has been quiet for those 10 years, 30 years, that is just itching. And it was itching to get out. And when it hit that stage in Sweden, I said, yeah, that's who I am. I'm not Elvis. I'm not this. I'm Bret Kaiser, and I'm the lead singer for Madam X.
That's awesome.
God, I got to tell you, the people in Sweden, I've never been to a place that had no hate. There was no hate.
Wow.
Everybody. There was only love. I met so many people that just, can we get your picture? Can we have your, yeah, of course. Jeez. How you meet somebody and you can tell if they're, if they have hate in their heart or,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
These people go out of their way for us.
Wow.
And it was amazing. I've never had that before, That's why I feel like it's new to us again,
Right. Now, had you stayed in touch with the other members?
I had an ego the size of the Empire State Building, and the cock to back it. So, you know what I'm saying? I was a New Yorker with an attitude, baby. I mean, you're East Coast talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, had you stayed?
We are the cock of the block. Nobody can us.
Now, had you stayed in touch with everybody through the years, or?
Who, Madam X?
Yeah.
No. As a matter of fact, no. When it ended, it ended. It didn't end well. It did not end well, but that's another chapter after we do something first. But we look back on it now, and we love each other. I mean, we all love each other, I mean, you cannot spend that much time. There were 5 of us in a Camaro, for God's sake, and a semi going from New York to L.A. back and forth 3-4 years in a row, 5 days off each year for Christmas. I mean, you try sitting on a Camaro in the back on the hump.
On the hump.
Going between shows. You just it was a family. It really was. But when it ended, it ended. It ended.
When it ended, though, for you, when you left, I mean, did you feel like bad leaving, or it was more of a relief leaving?
Oh, I felt bad only because of what we did together and had, you know. I felt confused because we didn't know what the hell was going on.
Right.
But at the time, see, when four people, talented artists, are just sitting around doing nothing,
yeah,
you know, that's when the shit starts. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you cannot expect everybody to get along 24/7 in a 2-bedroom apartment in Burbank, you know, going, what the fuck are we doing, you know? And you know, you're East Coast. You get pissed, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So then the fighting started, you know, and stuff. And before I hurt anybody, I said, you know what, I'm going back to New York. I'm going home, you know. And I left.
Wow.
And Roxy, like, you know, Roxy went to Vixen. So we, you know, because we kind of hung, me and Roxy and Chris and Max, you know, it was like.
Right.
The sisters, you know, they had their own thing going, you know what I mean? They were their own world.
Right.
So I learned early on not to get in the middle of the sisters. So so we just decided, you know, I decided I'm going back to New York, and she went to Vixen, and good luck, see ya, boom, you know.
Wow.
All I want is a fucking plane ticket, get me home, and that's what I wanted, you know. And I'll talk to you later about my other monies that I have coming to me. But you know what? I live life that way. I don't hold grudges. I don't live life saying what if. I move on and I do my thing.
Right.
And it just came around that it was supposed to be like this. We were supposed to have that break.
Right.
You know?
Now, when you went back home to New York and started the band back up with your brother, did you feel more like this is where I belong, this is where I should be?
Yeah, because it was my brother and my buds, you know, my brothers and stuff, and you know, New York scene was kicking. I mean, we were rocking. You know, did I miss the Madam X? Yeah, you know, I missed playing with them and stuff, and I would always go. You know, I took what I learned. You know, I mean, Rick Derringer produced our record. You know, I learned a lot from Rick and George Tucko and the engineer and stuff. So I took what I learned from everybody on the road, you know, all the stuff that we did, and I just tried to make my band, you know, not Madam X, but to get to that next step. You know, then I moved them out to Arizona. When we came out here, we ruled out here. We had the biggest following. You know, we had, I mean, our shows were packed with chicks every night, you know, and then the guys would come because the chicks would, so it would be doubly packed. And we got a Bud Light sponsorship, you know, out of that big contest of all the bands. You know, we were sponsored by Bud Light. So we took that on a tour. We went all the way to Memphis, you know, and we were in Memphis and we were playing in Memphis, and I'll never forget it. We played at this place called the Stage Stop, and the owner of the club was Miss Nita, and you know, now here I am. I got my long curly hair. You know, we're rock and roll, and I say to the guys, I go, "Hey, we got to do some Elvis tonight." And they were like, "What? Are you kidding? We're in Memphis." Like, hell yeah, that's why we got to do some Elvis. So me and my keyboard player, we started doing "Are You Lonesome Tonight," and I'm singing to this table of chicks, right? And I'm like, you know, I'm doing "Are You Lonesome Tonight," you know, and the girls are looking at me like sighing, going, "Oh," you know, and then they reach in their shirts, and I'm saying to myself, "Well, yeah, here we go. Here come the bras. They're going to take their underwear off. Cool." And they pull out their laminates, and the whole table worked at Graceland. They were all Graceland tour guides.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah. So the show ends. Come over, and they're like, "Oh, you guys are fantastic. Do you do any more Elvis and stuff like that?" So I got to know two of them really good, you know, two of the girls really well. And they'd cook dinner and bring it over to the band, because we play there for a week. So they would bring dinner over, and they said, "Hey, we got a surprise for you. We set up a VIP tour of Graceland for your band." We're like, "What?" Like, yeah. So cool. So the next day we go down to Graceland. By ourselves, we get a bus, you know, and we get off this bus, and people are like, "Hey, who's that? Who's that? I don't know, but they look famous." Click, click. All of a sudden, the cameras start going, and it's like the paparazzi. It was so funny. And I think I heard, "That's think that's Van Halen. Take the picture. And everybody's taking pictures of us. So the owner of the club, Miss Nita, goes, son, she goes, if you ever cut your hair and sing Elvis, you could make $1 million. And I was like, well, cut my hair? What are you, crazy?
Yeah, right.
I had no inkling, none. But to show you how weird life is, who would have known that I would, and I do Elvis really good, and I could make a living at it, but I don't, later on in life. And here's another thing. When we did the High and High School video, I don't know if you've seen it, the High and High School video that was on MTV.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
Of course,
with the little person?
Yes.
Well, now if you notice in that video, he's daydreaming and the bars come down along the window and we're wearing jail stripes. Now, who would have thought 25 years later, 30, whatever, I'd be working in the jails as a detention officer. It's just strange to me. I thought about that the other day. I was watching the video. I'm like, holy shit. It's a jail setting. They're wearing stripes like my inmates do here. I'm like,
wow.
That's funny. To me, it's just, it's how everything works out,
It's like little signs here and there through life.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look back
totally.
and you go, holy, I can't believe I did that. I look back all the time and go, I'm glad I'm still alive. But I've always set myself.
I was going to say, how about when you had the two-colored hair, the black and blonde hair?
You want to know how that came about?
Yes.
Okay, I'll tell you how that came about. We were scheduled to go to England and play in the UK and stuff. Now, Chris or Max, I don't know who it was, but they said, you look too normal. I'm like, because I had my regular hair, my natural, like David Coverdale, because I had it back then. You know? And they're like, can you dye your hair black or bleach it out like Vince Neil? I go, fuck no. I'm not like anybody. I ain't nobody. I'm me. So I went down to Beverly Hills, and Attila, famous hairdresser in Beverly Hills, and I said, you know what, dude? I said, I want to do this half bleached white, and I want to do this half black. And he's like, I fucking love it. He goes, and he did it. And I go back to Jet Records, and I walk in, and Don Arden was like, oh, my fucking God, I fucking love it. It's amazing, and everybody was, and we went to England, and I couldn't go anywhere without having like 25 to 50 kids following, asking for autographs and pictures and stuff, because when the pictures came out in Kerrang and everything, everybody knew who I was. And it was fabulous. I mean, it was great.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because there was a band in New York in the late 80s called Pharaoh, and all four guys had that hair.
Yes, I know.
No royalties from that either?
No royalties. Same thing with Wrathchild. Remember that band Wrathchild?
Yeah.
The singer did the same thing with black and white hair. I was like, fuck. I said, I can't collect royalties because I found out the person who did it before me was Cruella de Vil, so.
There you go.
One Dalmatian, But yeah, it's just something I don't like being told what to do, as far as, you should do this, you should do this. No, you know what? Fuck you. I'll do what I want to do. So I did my hair black and white and blew everybody away. It was great. Now I have my hair. My hair now is like Elvis. I got a big pompadour, not a big one, but, a nice sized pompadour in the front, and it's short and stuff like that, because that's what I'd been doing until Madam X came back. Now I'm trying to grow my hair back out. Grew it out a little bit for the Sweden thing, but I still got the Elvis thing. Everybody's like, oh, what's with the Elvis hair? It's too long a fucking story, man. And what I did was I put some white hair as like a touch from the past, just like as a touch to the past. Put a couple of white pieces in my hair, and it looked great. It had, it was like, oh yeah, I remember he had black and white hair. So that's why I put that in there. Just like as a salute to the past.
Nice.
Yeah, it kind of worked out great. So I'm trying to grow my hair now, but I still have a job.
Yeah.
So I can't really push the envelope that much. So I don't know. I'm trying to, maybe I'll go out and get a wig or something. These days they have those wigs that you can't even tell. I just don't want to look like Kevin DeBro. God rest his soul, rest in peace. With that full helmet of his.
Yeah. That was one day he had the
if it's good enough for Kiss, wear wigs, I guess I could,
Yeah, they get away with it. Nobody says nothing to them. Now, how about when
I don't think
you
they'd
went
care
to work?
if they did either. the money they make. Oh.
That's true. Now, how about when you went to work, when you got that job as the corrections officer, was it hard for you, like, being a professional musician for so many years and then here you are actually becoming a normal citizen again?
No, you know why? Because I'm a people person. Being the singer in the band, commanding audiences and stuff like that, it came natural to be a detention officer because here I am. I can control. I have a captive audience. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just use my humor and I treat people with respect because that's how I want to be treated. And that's how I did my career for 20 years. I treat people the way I want to be treated. And I've never had a problem. I've had a couple of incidents,
Right.
fights and stuff like that, and saved a couple of lives. I got an award and a medal for bringing somebody back from the dead.
Wow.
And stuff. Yeah.
Huh.
The guy tried to hang himself. He was dead. We took him down, and I started CPR and brought him back to life.
Holy cow.
I don't think he was a happy camper, but you're not going to die on my watch, pal. I think I broke about 4 of his ribs, too, and he must have been in pain, but
he was alive.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I've seen some stuff, believe. But, I put together, in 2007, I put together a inmate idol contest. Like American Idol came out, so I said, the sheriff actually said, why can't we do a contest like that? So we did. We put our heads together and we came up with Inmate Idol.
Wow.
So that is when I got the newfound love for Randy, Simon, and Paula because I had to sit through at least 175 inmates who don't know what carrying a tune means. I mean, you want to talk about fingernails on a chalkboard. Oh, my God. And we had to sit through about 175 people to find 10 contestants for this contest. So we finally did, and the contest, we did a live show, and we had Alice Cooper as a judge, the sheriff, was a judge, and I was a judge as Elvis. So we put this show on, and they go up and they sing their songs, and we vote, and then there's a winner, and the winner wins Big Macs and pizza for his pod wherever he lived at the time, whatever house he was in. And soda and everything else. So that was a big thing, Didn't cost the taxpayers anything and, keeps the violence down in the jails and stuff like that. So we do the contest. It goes over great. Worldwide publicity. I mean, it was all over the internet and everything. Inmate Idol. So
that's awesome.
About a couple days later after the show, I get this phone call, right? And I'm like, hello. He goes, this is Bret Kaiser. I go, yeah. I go, who's this? He goes, my name is David Klawans. I go, all right, how can I help you? He goes, well, I'd like to make a movie about your character. I'm like, who the fuck is this? Seriously, that's what I said. I thought maybe it was one of my friends clowning around, So I go, he goes, no, my name is David Klawans. And I said, honey, look up David Klawans on the computer. She looks it up. He did Nacho Libre.
Okay.
The movie Nacho Libre.
Uh-huh.
Coach Carter, all these movies. He goes out and he finds true stories, and he makes movies about them.
Huh.
Seriously. So I'm like, okay, Mr. Klawans, how can I help you? Well, I think you got an interesting story. You were a heavy metal singer, turned detention officer, puts together a singing contest to quell violence in the jails, and you moonlight as Elvis. He goes, how can that not be a movie? So I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. So he sent me a contract for my life rights, my story. And next No, they were going to make a movie starting in 2007. It was going to, the working title was Jailhouse Rock 2007. Here we are, 2015, and they're still excited about it, but they haven't done it. So he still calls me. We keep in touch. And they got Brian Robbins was going to be the director, who did Wild Hogs and everything and stuff like that.
Okay.
And Norbit and everybody. And he's like, they come here, and they took me to lunch and everything, and I told them all my jail stories, which are phenomenal,
I can imagine.
And so I'm telling them these, and they're saying, well, I go, who are you going to get to, play me? He goes, well, who do you want to play? I said, well, me. I'd like to be in it. He goes, yeah. He goes, but we need a name guy. So we've been talking to Vince Vaughn, Will Ferrell, and Jack Black, and I'm like, wait a second. He goes, is this a comedy? He goes, well, yeah. How could it not be? Look at all the stories you just told me. I go,
wow.
Well, you forget Will Ferrell and Vince Vaughn. I said, Jack Black, if he loses some weight, I could see him with the Elvis hair in a mirror, doing the thing.
Sure.
I said, but I go, can't you get somebody cool like Johnny Depp or
right.
Uncle Jesse? John Stamos.
Sure.
So, well, first of all, Depp has a 10-year waiting list on movies.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, it turns out 2007. It's been over 10 years. Come on, you could have had Johnny Depp. So anyway, long story short, it's still going to make it. They're still going to make it. They just don't, they're trying to find a home for it right now because Disney picked it up first, but then Disney was busy with the pirate movies and all their cartoons and everything like that, so they said, no,
right.
we want to find another home for it that's going to take it serious. So I'm waiting for that, too. You can look that up on the Internet, Jailhouse Rock, Brian Robbins, and all that kind of stuff.
Huh.
But that was exciting, stuff that was happening during all that break, and stuff, while I was a detention officer. Well, I still am, but, So I kind of kept music going,
right.
On a different plane. You know what I mean?
Now, with something like that, did that maybe make you think about writing a book, your autobiography?
I want to, yeah. I got to find a ghostwriter, though, because, I type with one finger. And it takes forever to write a book. But, yeah, I do want to write my story. I got so many, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff that I've done, and lived and seen, especially working in the jails. Oh, my God.
You can probably do a book alone on that.
I'm telling you. All the stuff, the rock and roll stuff, the stuff that I've been through. I knock on wood every day, and like I said, I say my prayers, and I thank God for keeping me safe and healthy all these years. I look at some of my friends that went down the wrong road, and they're alcoholics or using drugs and stuff like that. And I could say that, I'm very healthy. I'm very self-conscious. My ego would not let me ever look bad. And I've done martial arts, growing up. One of my best friends who I grew up with when we did martial arts together, his name is Morgan Carey, and we used to babysit his little sister at the time. And her name is Mariah Carey. So,
wow.
Yeah, and we were teaching martial arts in Northport, back home in Northport and stuff, and I could remember her as a little, itty bitty little girl and stuff. And
that's pretty
but Morgan, yeah, he's a trainer. He trains people now, and he's living in Italy and stuff like that. But I mean, it's been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful life. It really has. Like I say, you got to thank the man upstairs. I'm not a very religious character, but I'm very spiritual, and I do believe in God and stuff, and I thank him all the time. Because, I look at my son now who's 20. Believe that?
Wow.
My son is 20. My daughter, my daughter, she's 21. So my kids are, at that age to take off now.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
now, what do they think of their father's past musical career?
It's funny because, when I was going through my Elvis thing and stuff, my kids were in junior high, I think it was, junior high school. And my son would be like, I said, I'm going to come up to you at school. He goes, well, could you wear a hat? I traumatized them with the Elvis thing because everybody, I mean, it doesn't matter where we go. We're on vacation. People want to come up and take their picture, you know. And it's not because of me, Bret Kaiser. It's because it looked like Elvis, you know.
Right.
So like, hey, Elvis, can we take your picture with you? Like, sure. You know, my wife gets a little upset because she's like, we're on vacation. You know, it's not Elvis, for God's sake. You know, but I said, honey, it goes along with the thing, you know. It just goes along with it. You make people happy. I like to make people happy, you know.
Right.
I don't mind taking pictures with people because, you know what, I dig how Elvis impacted everybody, you know.
Yeah, big time. Still to this day.
You know, my daughter is a phenomenal singer. You know, she sings fantastic, you know, and she's starting to get into music, you know. My son he runs my sound, you know. He runs my sound when I do my Elvis shows in 56, you know, the band 56, he runs the sound sometimes. So it's there. I don't think he'll be a singer yet. He might one day. I started late. I was a late bloomer in the music. You know, when I first started, it was 1974, I think, 74, 75. Okay. My younger brother played in a talent show with another guitar player and a drummer. They didn't have a bass player. But when he got up there, I saw these girls, you know, screaming. You know, I was 14. You know, he was 13 or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And so what happened? Well, sibling rivalry kicks in. And I go, you know, you guys need a bass player. So my brother, being my little brother, you know, my younger brother, he goes, well, why don't you learn how to play bass and join the band? I said, oh, sure, okay. So I did. I taught myself how to play the bass. And I joined the band. And then came 1977 when Elvis passed away. I said, you know what, I don't want to be a bass player. I want to be a singer now. And I dropped the bass. And I wanted to be a rock and roll singer. And that's how it started, the whole thing. You know, I thank my brother for being in that band, you know.
Wow. Now, you mentioned earlier, too, about Judas Priest, that you were considered to take over for Halford, you were saying?
Yeah, when Halford left, I got a call actually from Sebastian, who said, hey, I gave your number to the Priest guys. They were looking for, you know, they want a singer, and they know you know, that Rob knew, because I met Rob from Arizona, you know, a couple of times. And when he left Priest, they were looking for somebody, and they got the, you know, Tim Ripper, whatever his name was. Excellent singer, you know, and stuff, but you know, I was asked, you know, they were trying to find, and I said, you know what, it's cool. I'm not into it. You know, I like my band, you know, and I want to do this. You know, and I actually, that's the kind of person I am. You know, I don't have no regrets. You know, I do what I want to do. You know.
Right.
If you sit there going, I should have done this, and I should have done that, and I should have done this, you're going to lose your hair. And I got a full head of hair still, and I'm not going to lose my hair. You know?
You're absolutely right.
I love what I'm doing, love what I do, and look what happened. It came around, full circle, and here we are. Madam X is doing a new record, and I'm sure it's going to be huge, you know, and we're going to get out there and push it and see what happens.
Now, are you guys going to
probably stroke out and have a heart attack on stage, but hey, at least the record will freaking... Kidding.
Now, are you guys going to put that out yourself independently?
Well, we're going to put together the best possible product we can put together, and hopefully, I don't know, maybe Frontier Records or somebody, you know, because, you know, there's some of these labels that are still trucking, and they give the band, you know, the exposure. They get better exposure than we would do it ourselves. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
So maybe we can get somebody to pick it up for distribution or some tour support and stuff like that. But these days you can do it yourself, you know, and is that a good thing? Yeah and no. I love having a record deal. The record company took care of it. But what a lot of bands didn't realize is that that's your money they're giving you. You're spending your money. You know, the tour you're on, you're paying for. The bus you're on, you're paying for. The videos, you pay for. So we were like, we got $250,000 record advance in Madam X. Like, where's all our money? Well, here it is. Here's the 2 videos. You got a tour bus. You got the crew. You got this. You got that. You got this. You bing, bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment in Burbank. Bing, bing, bing. Oh, okay.
Wow.
You know, a lot of bands don't realize that till it's too late. You know, some bands are smart, you know, and the ones that are the smart are the ones that are still around and still trucking. You know, they did smart things with their money, you know, and they didn't get taken advantage of. See, we were taken advantage of. If you think about it, Don Arden was our manager, but he was also our label. Big mistake.
Right.
Had we known that back then, we probably would have done better, but who's going to say no? You know,
yeah,
you
right.
play one time in L.A. and you get a record deal from Don Arden, you know, who at the time, don't forget, you know, brought Ozzy back, you know, ELO, Air Supply, Lita Ford, Black Sabbath. We couldn't say no. We were babes in the business, man. I can remember being at a party, our first party in L.A. Motley Crue was there, Rat, John Bon Jovi, Runaway just came out. Another Autograph, a whole bunch of bands, and these guys were doing blow like it was going out of style. There was a table in the middle of the room with mounds of Coke on it, and we're standing there like babies going, what the fuck? These guys are going to town, and we're like, oh, it's time to go, because we weren't that kind of, you know, like, wow, we heard about this stuff, but, you know, we weren't hip. You know, we were babies.
Wow.
You know, so we left. Yeah,
now,
it was crazy, man. Yeah.
How about Don Arden did you like working with Don Arden?
Oh, yeah, Don was a great guy. I mean, you know, I know he had a rep, you know, and my wife just got done reading Sharon's book and painted a very dark picture of him and stuff, but you know, he was good to us, you know. He's smiling while he was fucking me in the ass is what he was doing, you know. But who knew? We didn't know, you know.
Wow.
I look at it now and I wish we would have done things differently, but it did, like I said, we did what we did. It brought me to this point, and I got no regrets, you know.
Yeah.
You know? Who else? To me, it was a learning experience, you know.
Right.
I will never. I have done a lot more than a lot of bands will ever do in their lives. You know, there are millions of bands out there that will never get the chance that I've had or I'm having. You know, so I just, like I said, I thank God and I move on. Onward and upward is what we're doing. You know, turn it to 11. Because if there was ever, we've had our Spinal Tap moments in this band.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, how about, I mean, it's 30 years later now, and the original band back together. Do you still kind of, like, say to yourself, like, I never really think this would ever have happened?
I didn't think it would, you know, till I got that phone call. But as soon as I got the phone call, I said, yeah, this could happen. This is cool. You know, why not? You know,
sure.
We all grew up, and I miss doing the metal, you know, the rock and stuff.
Right.
You know? So from that point, when I said yes, all I have done is like look forward to doing it, writing the songs. We're writing long distance writing, which is hard, but you know, Dropbox, and you write tracks, you send it that, they send back, I turn it into a song, then I got to fly to Detroit. You know, it's been pretty expensive, but you know, it'll pay off. So
right.
But now, I mean, I'm looking forward to the future. I really am.
And like you just said, I was gonna say, like you just said, with the new way of recording, like you're, you know, emailing stuff back and forth and all. Would you prefer to have it the old way, where everybody's in a room together and doing things, or are you okay with the? Do you like the modern?
I prefer it there, you know, but I got to say, the vocal tracks on Another 80s Rock Song I did here in Arizona, you know.
Okay.
You know, so it works. Thank God for today's technology.
Yeah.
You know? Thank God for Facebook. Otherwise, all the fans wouldn't have been in touch with, and this might not never happen.
Sure.
You know, just today's technology helps, but if you look at it from an artist's standpoint, as far as how you can collect your money for your craft, it's not that easy.
Right.
You know? It was easier when you had a record company, you know, because there was a way you do things. You buy a record, the songwriter gets his royalties, the band gets their pay, you know. Now, you put it out yourself, what do? Say you use like CD Baby or something to put it on. Well, CD Baby sends it to iTunes, to those other things, Pandora, you know, those other sites. What's that one that gives you like half a penny or a quarter of a cent for the song?
Oh, Spotify?
Yeah, Spotify, you know. I heard like Bette Midler sold millions and millions and millions, and she got a couple of dollars for it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know? But, hey, it's a way you reach a lot more people. But the thing is, I heard also in 2014 there was hardly any platinum artists.
Yeah.
You know, there were no records. There were no platinum records.
I think it was only Taylor Swift was the only one.
Yeah. To keep track of, I mean, they really got to put something in place where they can keep track of record sales, CD sales, digital download sales. I mean, I know there's a way to do it, obviously. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a way to put it out there. So there's a way to track things, especially these days. They track everything.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm just looking forward to rocking and rolling. That's what, you know, I'm glad we're back together. I'm glad everybody gets along. Let's make some great music and do some great shows. You know, trying to get on these big festivals and shows and stuff, and we're working with Big Time Entertainment, Sullivan Big, who handles all the, you know, 80s bands and stuff, so to speak, at all the festivals. So we'll see what's going to happen.
Cool. Very, very cool. Yeah. Well, something else I saw in your bio, which I had to ask you. It said you were a comic book collector?
I have a Amazing Spider-Man comic book. You know, I got to tell you something, and I'm not trying to be like Elvis or anything like that, but he said he's seen movies. He was always the hero in the movie, always was the hero in the. That's how I grew up. I always grew up, like, when I was younger, you know, I loved superheroes, Batman, Superman, you know. I think when I was a little kid, my babysitter saved me from jumping off the ledge of I thought I could fly, you know, that kind of thing. I started collecting I liked Spider-Man, so I started collecting his comics back in whatever. I have like number 3 up, whatever.
Wow.
And I put them away, though. You know, I mean, that stopped when the martial arts started. When the martial arts started, that stopped when the music started. You know, I moved,
right.
You know, like, you know, I do what I do till I do something else, and then I've always been the kind of person that had to put 150% into what I was doing at that moment. You know.
Right.
Now it's, you know, as you get older, you try to learn how to juggle. You got to give this amount of time to this, and this amount of time to this, and this amount of time to this. So that, you know, that's how I've been. You know, I give 150% of the moment. If I'm doing 50, like this Friday I leave for a little Texas tour with my band 56.
Okay.
I'm going to, and I'm playing down in Harlingen and Donna and San Benito and Wasleka, you know, all the old RV resorts.
Okay.
But my band 56, it's a target audience for us, and we're getting paid phenomenally to do it. So why not? You know?
Sure.
And it's fun. Yeah, you got to check out my CD, my record. It's pretty cool. It's great. It's got a lot of great originals on it and stuff. A couple of cover tunes.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had to put a record out with that.
Yeah, a little CD, you know, it's called Steppin', and it's kick-ass. I mean, it really is.
Nice.
I can send you the single if you want. We got a
Sure. Yeah, as a matter of fact, send that over to me, and I'll play that along with this interview.
Oh, okay. I don't want the Madam Xers to get them. But hold on, I gotta get your email. Did you send me your email? Yeah, I'll just send it to your email, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll send you that, and yeah, cool. I appreciate it, man. I really do. I was blown away by when you asked that. I was like, yeah, cool. I thought it'd be really, really cool, man, and it'd be great to connect with the East and stuff.
Absolutely.
A lot of people were saying, you guys really will do great over in Europe and stuff, and the States aren't that happening on. I'm like, bullshit. We did great when we Madam X, when we played from New York to Phoenix, through Texas. We did great in Texas, Ohio, New York. We played L.A. We did really good. So I think there's still people that remember us. They might be a little older now, but.
Yeah, it's like certain areas are still really great for the 80s bands, and believe it or not, Philly's not one of them. It's weird. It's very weird.
Really?
And a lot of the bands that I talk to, I've asked them about this because I always noticed for years, if you see when they're doing like East Coast runs, they're playing New York, they're playing North Jersey, which does well. They'll skip Philly. And then they're in Maryland. Yeah. And
we were good in Maryland with the Kicks all the time in Maryland and stuff back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, I can't. We did Philly.
Yeah, I
City
asked
of
Chris
brotherly love.
Yeah, Chris was like, I don't think we ever played Philly.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
That's crazy.
Pennsylvania. I can't even think we even played anywhere in Pennsylvania. I think we slept through Pennsylvania when we drove, but I know we did the Carolinas, and I know we did Virginia, and I know we did West Virginia, Ohio. We played all over, but I can't remember if we ever played in Pennsylvania for the life of me.
Wow.
I know that's trying to reach back a ways, 30 years, but shit. I can remember playing in... Seriously, I can remember playing in Delaware. I remember playing in Rhode Island. If you can remember playing in Rhode Island, you should be able to remember everything. Seriously.
If you can remember playing in Delaware.
Vermont. We got snowed in Vermont. I remember that. I remember playing in Leesville, Louisiana, standing in about an inch of piss and beer because there was no room for anybody to go to the restroom. It was so packed and so hot. Oh, my God. It was such times, man. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I was playing in Thibodaux, Louisiana. I'm standing at the bar waiting for a drink, and this big burly motherfucker comes up behind me and goes, "Excuse me, you want to dance?" And I turned around and I go, "What?" He goes, "Holy shit." He goes, "Son, if you had tits, I'd fuck you."
Oh, boy.
And I was like, thank God I don't have any boobs.
Oh, it's too
But they
funny.
had some good food down in Louisiana. Yeah.
Wow.
We met such cool people, man. We met the Bertinellis in Shreveport, Louisiana, Valerie's parents and brothers.
Okay.
And stuff. We met such good people, man,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Cool. All right. How about a Madam X song? What Madam X song would you like us to play? I'll be playing the new one automatically, so pick one of the old ones.
After that, play She's Hot Tonight.
She's Hot Tonight.
That's my favorite. And, of course, Metal in My Veins. Can't beat that scream in the beginning. I listened. I haven't listened to the record in the longest time. It would come on because KDKB out here would play it, in high school. The DJ was a friend, and as a matter of fact, one of my fondest memories, my son calls me on the radio, Dad. I'm like, what? Are you okay? He's like, you're on the radio. Listen. And he holds the phone away, and I can hear, you're high in high school. And he's with his friends, and he's like, shut up, that's my dad. And that to me, made it all worth it. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great moment right there.
I remember the moment I saw myself on MTV the first time. we were in a bar, and it just blew my mind. The little MTV emblem on it and everything, and, you know,
right.
I was like, holy shit, it's real. You know, what it feels like to me now, you know, doing this new record, doing these new songs and everything, it feels all over again. You know, it's going to start all over again.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
And
well, go ahead.
When this comes out, if everybody likes the idea I have, it's going to be epic. You know,
it sounds like you're plotting something.
Oh, it's going to be cool. You just got to wait and see. And you know what? I want you to remember what I said, and then we'll talk again, and you'll go, you're right. Shit, you're right. This is a cool idea. This was great stuff.
Now I'm like, what's he up to? That's awesome.
Just have to wait.
Before I let you go, if I can just get you to cut a quick ID for me. This is Bret Kaiser of Madam X. You can throw your 56 in there, whatever you want to do. And you're listening to Totally Driven Radio.
Totally Driven Radio?
Yep.
Okay, hold on. When do I do it?
Go for it right now.
Okay. Hey, this is Bret Kaiser from Madam X, and you're listening to Totally Driven Radio. Did that blow the speakers?
Holy cow.
Sorry.
That was pretty intense.
Did I blow the speakers?
Wow. Well, that was a good one. Thank you. So, I mean, you just proved right there that you can still hit the notes.
Oh, yeah. That was my warm-up throughout my whole career. What I would do was before the show starts, I would do my favorite Screaming for Vengeance that Halford did. And if it worked, then I knew the night was going to be good. If it was scratchy, I knew I had to talk a little more. And if it didn't work, well, then I had to move around like a maniac. You know? Before I'd go, you know, and if it works, hey, great, cool, you know.
Now, when your wife or kids hear you scream like that, do they think like, holy cow, like they didn't think you had that in you?
I don't know, but my dog just came upstairs. Siberian Husky that just popped her head in like, what the fuck is going on in here? But yeah, you know, I mean, when I hit that note in Sweden, and you just heard a roar of fucking people yelling. I was like, cool.
That's
even the
great.
guy Hannes from Sweden Rock, he goes,
okay.
You know, you still got it. Oh my God. You know, he goes like these other guys, and I think he said David Coverdale. He goes, he can't sing anymore.
Yeah.
None of these guys. I like the thing that I think is going to be good is that Madam X is all 4 original members.
That's huge.
You know what I mean? It's not only the guitar player or only the bass player or the drummer from the band, and you still call the band what it was.
Right.
I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who I mean. You know
sure.
what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's huge because it's such a rarity today when you have all the original members intact. So, yeah, it's huge.
And we still look good.
Yeah.
We don't look like the road crew.
Oh, that's great.
About the metal, you know, like all of a sudden everybody started looking like the road crew. What the fuck is
Yeah.
up with that? I know there was a hit TV show, Sons of Anarchy, but does every band have to fucking look like that? What?
Yeah.
What happened to looking good?
I don't know.
But that's, you know, whatever.
As a matter of fact, I think it was Rob Zombie just came out recently saying, like, when 90s with the grunge, when that came in and, you know, everybody kind of looked like that. And he thinks that was like the major downfall of the music business because it didn't set apart the people from the rock stars.
You know, I can't take anything away from the talent in Nirvana because the talent was there.
Right.
But you know, that whole grunge movement, that fucking sucked. I'm sorry. You know. give me some straight ahead rock and roll. I'll take Kiss or Priest or, you know, show bands over any of them any day of the week. That's just me. You know, that's my personal opinion.
Sure.
And is the talent there? Oh, my God, yes. Dave Grohl? Oh, my God. What a talent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, Cobain? No brain, whatever you're going to call him, whatever. Kurt no brains anymore. But, no, he was a genius. You know, I mean, he was an artist. You know?
Yeah.
He had there. But look what happened. You know, I mean, some people just, I always say, let me have that chance.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Guys that make it, and they have money, and they have this and that, and then they go blow their fucking brains. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Give me the chance. Jesus.
I hear you.
And that goes for sports stars or anybody. You know, I just don't understand it.
I guess they don't realize how truly lucky they are to have been given that chance. Yeah.
Look at Michael Jackson. My God.
Yeah.
You know, the man, unbelievable entertainer. You cannot deny that he was an entertainer.
Right.
But, geez, Christ, man. Proferol? Really?
Yeah, right.
That stuff. Oof.
Yeah. That's a whole nother level there.
Oh, my God. But anyway, life is, you know, life is for the living, you know, and you got to live it and do the best you can. How was Chris, by the way, talking to Godzilla? Is he a riot or what?
I'll tell you what, I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't.
Did he wear you out? Because he wears me out when I...
We went 2 hours. And I'll tell you what, I mean, he told me a lot of stuff. He got very deep and emotional at one point. I almost thought he was going to break down in tears.
Let me guess. The Sebastian era?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of figured. He's trying to make amends for it.
Yeah, it's really, it really seems like it's really taking a toll on him.
Yeah. It is what it was, you know.
Right.
Sebastian told him to do that, and he did it, and, you know, but Baz was a kid, you know. He wasn't as young as a kid as he says he was, but he was a kid.
Right.
You know. But that was a different time. I wasn't there, you know. I've been friends with Sebastian all during that and through it, you know. And he would ask me, he goes, "How could you put up with these assholes?" You know. And I was like, I said, "You just got to do what you got to do, man. If you want to do it, you just do it, you know." You know, I wish him all the best. Good friend, you know, he's a good friend. I just seen him not too long ago here. We did a little video clip that was on our Facebook page. He was singing the thing, and then I hit that note, and he's like, "Fucking, did you hear that?" He ran out and he pulled four times. He pulled people on the bus to hear that note. I was like,
that's awesome.
Really fast. Yeah, good guy. He really is. He's a good guy. But yeah,
that's
Chris
great.
Godzilla is a character, I got to tell you. And there's nobody that has a bigger heart than Chris. I mean, he is a genuine good soul, and he tries his hardest to be the best he can be. And you know that's what made me really forgive and get back and say, yeah, this can work, you know, Chris.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was both of you guys. It was a real pleasure talking to both of you. I mean, it was...
Keep in touch, and if you need anything, you know, let me know. You know.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right.
I appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate everything.
Hey,
man.
I really do. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, Bret.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Great night.
You too. Bye.